There's an old saying that leaders are readers. I just read where President Nixon reportedly watched 500 movies while he was president of the United States. The thought was that maybe he'd have been better served if he had read 500 really good books rather than watching movies, because we know how his presidency turned out. Anyway, this isn't about politics. This is about manufacturing and leadership. And this is Gary on manufacturing. This podcast is brought to you with support from Inductive Automation. Discover a whole new view with Ignition 8 by Inductive Automation, packed with features for the modern control system like unlimited licensing, high-powered tags, and a mobile-first flexible design environment for all devices. Ignition 8 supports enterprises of any size. See all Ignition has to offer at inductiveautomation.com. And if you go to the website, you could check out the upcoming Ignition Community Conference coming up in September and register and check out all the good things there. It's always a good time and a lot of good conversations to be had among people who use the SCADA software and technology. And some other good technology conversations usually too while we're there. It'll be live again this year. Looking forward to going. So talking about reading, I have a couple of books here I've recently gone through. I don't know about you, but guys, starting, I guess in the late 70s, I went to a management conference. The company I worked for took the quote unquote senior leaders, and that included me somehow. And we went offsite and had interdepartmental meetings. And, because I was liaison between engineering and accounting, I got to go to accounting meetings. Oh, joy. And amongst other things. But we had a speaker there. They always have a keynote speaker, even in the late 70s. And he was a guru of productivity and time management. And the net result of everything was, he taught us the beginnings of transcendental meditation. So he had the lights down and we were all sitting there going, Ram, because Ram is the mantra for the gut chakra in your in that system. But that's a seat of power, and we were all executives, so supposed to be powerful. Anyway, he also left us with a day timer, and that was my introduction to these little productivity things. And I got from day timer to Franklin Planner to proactive planner. A lot of you probably don't even know or remember proactive management. There was an actual book called Proactive Management, and I had the proactive planner I used for a while. I had another kind of planner, I forget the name of it. And I've gone through a lot of productivity systems, getting things done. You go to my website at themanufacturingconnection.com, and you'll see a little ad for an app called Nozbe, Nozbe, and that's a getting things done type of app, which I used for quite a few years, but I really don't use anything like that anymore. The reason I bring up these productivity things is one of the recent books I read, which I recommend, is 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals by Oliver Burkeman, Burkeman. 4,000 weeks. If you live to be about 80, which if you've made it this far, you got a good chance of making 80. So that's 4,000 weeks, roughly. And that's where he goes. And he starts out somewhere in the beginning talking about a comment from the English economist Keynes, who, and I remember reading this, I think when I was in college, that, as we become more productive, we should be able to reduce our workload and work 3-day weeks, 4-day weeks, and get the same amount of work done and be able to have more leisure time. Well, in the ensuing 55, 60 years, what has happened? Well, every time that we make this productivity gain, we make a little more money, do we just relax? No, we see something else we want. We're keeping up with the Joneses and we're about ready to catch up with the Joneses. Then we find another Jones family that we want to keep up with. And we take off again on the endless gerbil wheel of running in place faster and faster and faster and going nowhere. And we try all these productivity hacks so that we can get more done in the limited amount of time that we have on this earth. And basically, he winds up, Burkeman says that productivity is a trap. And it's and most of us will probably have experienced that we just try more and more and more, and where is it getting us, and are we doing more and enjoying it less, to paraphrase an old cigarette commercial from the 50s, 60s, 70s, I don't know. Anyway, that's the gist of what he looks at. He takes a look at time and productivity and things from a different level, going through a lot of things. And when he gets toward the end, he basically comes down to a couple of thoughts that I really like, and I've seen them before. One is, how would somebody ask Carl Jung, the psychologist, how you would spend your days differently? And what would you do if you finished something? And he said, well, I spend my days quietly and quietly do the next and most necessary thing. And that's all we really need to know about getting through the day. Is, even though we get emails and get trapped in all kinds of crap and stuff, just kind of quietly get our job done and then go on to the next important thing, the next big thing. And then he quotes an older philosopher by the name of Blaise Pascal, and he suggested that occasionally we should practice doing nothing. And people said, well, I can't just do nothing, I'd be bored. And the idea is, bored is good. Sit around, be bored. Your mind is going to like traverse all over the place, and you'll come up with some really creative ideas by sitting around being bored. But Pascal said, I need to get this quote. I have discovered that all the unhappiness of man arises from one simple fact, that they cannot stay quietly in their own chamber. Anyway, take that, I have learned that, and sit quietly, focus on your breathing. 10 minutes after lunch or in the middle of the afternoon is a good way to rejuvenate and refocus on the next necessary task. The second book I read recently was given to me as a review copy. It's called Steel Toes and Stilettos, and that would be shoes. And it's a true story of women manufacturing leaders and lean transformation success by Shannon Karels and Kathy Miller. They don't identify the companies they worked for and which company they worked for when they did this work. But for some of us of a certain age, the go-to guru book of manufacturing transformation was called The Goal by Cox and Goldratt. And it had to do with Goldratt's theory of constraints. And that book told the story of manufacturing transformation is a first-person story, if you will, about a plant manager who's trying to rescue his company. He's been told, or his plant, and he's been told, okay, we're going to have to shut this thing down. You're not making any money. It's a lost cause. And he's thinking, I'll lose my job. Everybody's going to lose their jobs. They shut this down. What does that do to the town? The whole thing. And he's puzzling through all that, and he meets a guru, kind of a Yoda type character before Yoda, and it basically starts teaching him to look for the place in the production line where things are backed up. And this is so old that he goes to the IT guy, and they do reams of printouts, and they study the printouts paper. Do you remember those days? Man, I remember those days. But they study those, and they figure out which machine or which part of the process is to hold up. And the idea is the whole line isn't going to get faster until you fix the slowest one. The slowest one sets the time for the line. And the analogy was when he was on a Boy Scout hike and he just turned the boys loose and the fast ones took off, and then they would have to wait for Herbie, the slow guy, because there's always in any group the slow guy. And they figured out. And so the fast guys are bored, they get up to the front, they're frustrated, they want to keep on going. And the troop is all scattered out along the hiking trail. And then they say, wait a minute, why don't we put the slowest guy first? And then they all have to just stay with him, and that will keep them all, because the whole thing isn't going to go any faster anyway than the slowest operation. And he applied that to his manufacturing. And that's the theory of constraints in a very simple form. And they tackle things one at a time back at the manufacturing plant, and they save the company. Well, these two people, Shannon and Kathy, had learned lean and digital transformation and lean transformation and all this kind of stuff, and also operations management. They were supply chain people too originally, and put it all together. And this book, Steel Toes and Stilettos, the metaphor for the journey they took to transform 3 plants in the division into clean, enthusiastic, good places to work, profitable plants. They used the journey of shoes, and then the shoes are the chapter headings, and they talk about steel toes to walk out into the plant, and stilettos because they were both short women, and to get a little extra height, I guess, was part of the whole shtick. But and then they have hiking boots and party shoes and all kinds of stuff. That's a good metaphor for the journey. But the story is really good. And for any of us who have been in operations management or any way tied to operations, it will ring home to us for sure. Because we've been there. I've been in dirty plants, and you're worried about slipping on oil on the floor and all kinds of stuff. And then I've been in plants over the last, I don't know, 10 years, where it's quiet. They've enclosed all the machining operations. You can walk. In fact, you don't even need steel toes and safety glasses anymore in a lot of these plants, because everything is enclosed. And so they talk about that transformation. It's a really good book. It's a first-person book, told by each of them and their own story. And it gives a little insight into some of the challenges of women executives in manufacturing. And this is pretty new. And so I can remember through my career, which goes, I started writing 20 years ago. So it's been a long time since I was actively in a plant. But I've promoted women, and I've kind of had to shepherd women through some mazes of because of the feedback and the obstacles put up in front of them, and the negativity sometimes of dealing with a woman in manufacturing, and say, hey, I wouldn't have put this person in this position if they weren't good. So let's get on with the job. But anyway, it's a good book on that level. It's a good book on the personal level. A lot of us have worked on these transformations, and we lose a lot of family time because we're working so long to get this particular project done. And so it's a many level book, which good books are. So anyway, highly recommend it. It's a really good example of lean transformation of actually 3 manufacturing plants, how they did it, how they put the team together, some of the constraints and some of the problems that they had, and so on. Very realistic. So anyway, leaders are readers. I can suggest these 2 books pretty wholeheartedly: Steel Toes and Stilettos, a story about lean transformation, and 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals by Oliver Burkeman. I really encourage you to pick that up. There is some really good reading in there. Anyway, I hope things are going well. You're staying safe and doing your own manufacturing transformations, and maybe your personal transformations as well. And this podcast is brought to you with support from Inductive Automation. Discover a whole new view with Ignition 8 by Inductive Automation. It's packed with features for the modern control system, like unlimited licensing, high-powered tags, and a mobile-first flexible design environment for all devices. Ignition 8 supports enterprises of any size. See all Ignition has to offer at inductiveautomation.com. Thanks for listening. Talk to you again later.